Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rita. I'm Steve Saul. Welcome to North West Today. Our top stories this Friday lunchtime.
With the lack of remorse as well, I completely lost any sympathy that I had for them, and I felt like it's the right thing for them to be sent to prison for a long time.
Teenagers Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe are named for the first time for killing the Warrington teenager Brianna Ghey. A bus has had its roof ripped off after hitting a tree in Greater Manchester. First this lunchtime, two teenagers who murdered the schoolgirl Brianna Ghey in Warrington have been named for the first time. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe carried out a forensic and ferocious attack on the 16-year-old in Colchester Linear Park in February last year. They stabbed her 28 times with a hunting knife. Well, BBC North West Tonight's Katie Barnfield's been following the story and the trial. And Katie, there's a lot more we can say today, isn't there?
There is indeed, Steve. We are now able to tell you a lot more about who Brianna Ghey's killers were and their relationship to her. We know that Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe were close friends who'd met at Colchester High School in Warrington. Brianna had never met Eddie Ratcliffe before he turned up at the bus stop with Scarlett Jenkinson on the day they were to kill her. But Scarlett Jenkinson was someone Brianna considered a friend. She thought she was going to meet her to hang out together in the park, but in fact, her friend was luring her to her death. Now, I spoke to Brianna's mum, Esther, and she said finding out who it was incredibly painful.
At the time, it felt like it was the worst possible scenario that could have happened. It was the worst possible person that could have done it to her. I felt that I could trust Scarlett because Brianna clearly trusted her as well. And I think that as a parent, you would never imagine that another child that your child's met from school would be capable of doing such a thing.
We also know that Scarlett Jenkinson met Brianna when she was transferred to Brianna's school, Birchwood Community High School, a few months before Brianna's death. They began talking in what's called the inclusion room, where students who need it are given one-to-one support. Brianna was in there because of her anxiety. Now, I also sat down with the head teacher of Birchwood Community High School, Emma Mills, who told me there was nothing she saw in school that caused her any concern.
We were asked by a local high school if we would take Scarlett on a placement due to the fact that she'd brought cannabis edibles into schools. At some point between November, December, their paths crossed in the inclusion room. In terms of Scarlett, there were no red flags. She came across as very polite, she was very quiet. There was nothing that indicated that this was going to happen.
The BBC has now learned, though, that Birchwood Community High School weren't aware of the full details of the incident involving cannabis edibles before they agreed to take Scarlett Jenkinson. In fact, she had given them to a younger child who didn't know what they were taking and who then became seriously ill, and the police were called.
Now, they're going to be sentenced later this afternoon. What else has been happening at court?
They are indeed, Steve. So the sentencing hearing has now been adjourned, and we understand that will happen at 2:15 this afternoon. But as soon as they were named in court, we were given footage of the moment each of the two teenagers was arrested the day after Brianna's murder.
You are under arrest on suspicion of murder. Obviously, you are under court.
The court was also told that despite denying everything during the trial, Scarlett Jenkinson had admitted stabbing Brianna to her psychiatrist, saying she killed her because she considered her a friend and that meant she would leave her.
Now, there's going to be some incredibly powerful victim impact statements have been read out, haven't there?
They have indeed. We've heard in court from Brianna's mum, Esther, her sister, Alicia, and her father, Peter Spooner. Esther said, "I've never felt such grief and I would never wish it on anyone else," while Alicia said, "No one can ever make me feel better. The only thing that would is hearing her voice and laughter, and I must carry that pain for the rest of my life." Well, this is obviously an extremely distressing and shocking case, and many questions are going to be asked now about Brianna's killers, what was known about them and whether they could have been stopped. Now, Colchester High School, the school Scarlett Jenkinson was transferred from, said they are now working with Warrington Safeguarding Partnership on an independent review which will examine the circumstances of her transfer between schools. We're told this review will conclude in early summer at which point all of its findings will be published.
OK, Katie, for now, thank you very much indeed. And Katie's been working on a documentary with the North West Tonight team, looking at the full story behind the murder of Brianna Ghey. That'll be released later today on the BBC iPlayer and on BBC Sounds. Now, a double-decker bus has lost its roof in collision